Welcome to Variant, where we love comics more than I can't wait to see what happens during the second half of Season 4 of The Flash. I'm your host, Arris. Since The Flash returns next week on CW, I thought I should talk about one of the new heroes to join Team Flash this season, and that is Ralph Dibny, aka Elongated Man. The character doesn't have that extensive of a comic book history, but since he's now part of Team Flash, there's no way I could go all of Season 4 without talking about him here on the show. Plus, I'm sure a bunch of you are curious about his comic book roots, so let's talk about him. At first glance, most people are like, Elongated Man is just a blatant ripoff of Mr. Fantastic in terms of abilities. But you would be wrong. Elongated Man first appeared in The Flash Volume 1, Issue 112 in May of 1960, while Mr. Fantastic first appeared in the Fantastic Four Issue 1 in November of 1961, almost a year and a half later. So even though I do like Mr. Fantastic more as a character, unfortunately, if you're gonna call anyone a ripoff, it would be Mr. Fantastic. Although, if you wanted to take that one step further, both Elongated Man and Mr. Fantastic are pretty much a copy of Plastic Man in terms of power set. Plastic Man first appeared in Police Comics Issue 1 in 1941. That's right, Quality Comics beat both DC and Marvel to the punch when it came to stretchy superheroes. With that said, DC did later acquire Plastic Man, so it's kind of like Disney's approach as of late. If you can't beat it, buy it. Anyway, now that I went off on a stretchy superhero comparing tangent, back to the character at hand, Elongated Man. He was created by writer John Broome and artist Carmine Infantino. And like I said previously, he first appeared in The Flash Volume 1, Issue 112 in May of 1960. A fun fact about the character is that he won an Alley Award in 1961 for Best Supporting Character. So do what you wish with that knowledge. But now let's move on to his comic book origin. Ralph Dibny grew up with the classic sibling scenario of the older sibling stealing the spotlight. In this case, that would be his older brother. Think of it like Louis Stevens' relationship with Ren Steven and Donnie Steven from Even Stevens. Speaking of, they need to put that show on Netflix, like, quick. But as far as his path to becoming Elongated Man, Ralph was fascinated by contortionists because they displayed feats of agility and flexibility. Trying to be like them, he soon found out that all the contortionists he talked to had one thing in common. They all drank a soda called Gin Gold. So of course, once he found out about this, he started researching and studying the chemistry of the rare extract that came from the Jingo fruit. Eventually, Ralph made an incredibly concentrated version of the drink, which of course gave him his insane stretching powers. If this sounds like a weird and goofy origin, that's because, well, it is, but it was the 60s, so what are you gonna do? With that said, Elongated Man has the distinction of being one of the first DC superheroes during the Silver Age of comics to reveal his secret identity to the world. Things like killing off characters and revealing your identity to the world is a little more commonplace in comics today, but back in the day, that was a huge deal. And on top of that, he was also one of the first superheroes to marry his love interest. Eventually, after teaming up with other heroes like Green Lantern, Batman, Zatanna, and so on, he became an official member of the JLA. His wife also became a member of the JLA. Even though she had no superhuman abilities, she was a quick thinker and a decent detective. Ralph and his wife Sue, I'm gonna stop there for a second, because does anyone else find it odd that Mr. Fantastic's wife is also named Sue? Just a little weird. Anyway, Ralph and his wife Sue were also known for having a happy, stable, and overall trouble-free marriage, which, as all of us comic book fans know, is not a thing with couples in comics. It's pretty much an anomaly in the world of superhero comics. So good for them for being the exception and not the rule. Elongated Man was created to be a supporting character for The Flash, but he would eventually be given solo backup stories in Detective Comics. It's here he was redefined as a detective who loves odd mysteries and traveling the States with his wife, searching for said mysteries. Sometimes he would even team up with other DC superheroes. Over time, these backup stories came more sporadic, and in 1973 he became a member of the JLA. It's in this title where he's mainly seen until 1995. Elongated Man had a pretty big role in Identity Crisis. During the event, Ralph's wife Sue died right before she was about to tell him that she was pregnant. Talk about rough and heart-wrenching. Needless to say, this tore Ralph apart, and his first suspect for her death was Dr. Light, who had previously sexually assaulted Sue and then threatened to find her again. However, we later found out that it was not Dr. Light. Turns out Sue was murdered by Jean Loring, aka Ray Palmer's ex-wife. Wanting to get back together with Ray, she thought that the surest way to do this was to endanger the loved one of another superhero. She believed by doing this, it would send all of the superheroes, including Ray, running back to their spouses. So Jean stole one of Palmer's old Atom suits and shrunk down and entered Sue's body, intending to give her a minor stroke, but instead it killed her. Talk about a plan going awry. This leads us to the 52 series. By this time, Ralph fell into deep depression due to the death of his wife, and he was going to kill himself when he learned that someone had vandalized his wife's tombstone. Long story short, Ralph was killed in the 52 event. Throughout most of the story, he was just trying to figure out a way to resurrect his wife. But again, he was eventually killed after shooting Dr. Fate's helmet. But don't worry, it's not all sad. At the end of week 52, it's revealed that Ralph's magical wish-granting gun, which was a souvenir from an old case, worked, and Ralph's last wish was to be reunited with his wife. So in death, Ralph and Sue are now reunited as ghost detectives. It sounds a bit corny, but it's sweet at the same time. I mean, who wouldn't want to be reunited with a loved one? In the Blackest Night storyline, Ralph and Sue's corpses are reanimated as Black Lanterns, and I gotta say, it was pretty dang terrifying. But eventually, the Indigo Tribe destroys them. Then we have the New 52, where Ralph is a rogue member of the Secret Six. He goes by the alias Damon Wells, aka Big Shot. But once he's reunited with his wife, he returns to his costumed Elongated Man persona in Secret Six issue 12. As for DC Rebirth, to my knowledge, he hasn't appeared yet. Obviously, I'm not reading every single DC title, but again, I'm almost positive he hasn't appeared yet. As I said earlier, Elongated Man gets his abilities from a concentrated version of a drink called Gin Gold. However, in Invasion issue 3, it was revealed that it was a metagene reaction to Gin Gold that provides Ralph with his elastic abilities. Which means Ralph is in fact a meta, and that a normal human would not be able to gain the same powers by drinking his Gin Gold concoction. As we all know, Elongated Man's most prominent power is his amazing stretchy ability. However, Ralph has far greater limitations than Plastic Man, who has no limit to how far he can stretch. He also is not able to open a hole in his body like Plastic Man. With that said, Elongated Man's powers make him incredibly durable, since he can bend and contort to almost any shape or position. In addition to Ralph's stretching abilities, he's considered one of the greatest detectives in the DC universe. He also has the ability to literally smell when something is not right or if a clue is nearby, and he also is an amateur chemist. As for reading recommendations, read The Flash issue 112, Identity Crisis, The 52 event, Justice League Europe, and any of the mid-1970 to mid-1990 JLA Comics. And I think that's enough to get you guys going. First up for Wednesday, January 10th, we have Mr. Miracle issue 6. This is a fan favorite series, and it hits its emotional conclusion of the first arc. Scott Free returns to New Genesis to face his punishment, but instead finds the whole world has been flipped upside down. Now we have Darth Vader issue 10. Putting it plain and simply, this has been a great title thus far. If you love Star Wars or Darth Vader, you need to be reading this. Here we have Detective Comics issue 972. Batman might have overpowered the Victim Syndicate, but they had one last surprise for him, a secret weapon that's made one of his strongest rogues nearly unstoppable. And finally, we have Action Comics issue 995. Time is broken, and Superman and Booster Gold are in over their heads trying to repair it. And that's going to do it for another episode of Variant, but remember to head over to variantcomics.com to keep up with the show and all things comic related. But I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.